Hey everyone, it's Nicole again. Back with the fifth report from CCSO's investigation on Prince's death. So, for those who like numbered pages like I do, this would be page 15 in the investigation. So, Adam Hastings. Deputy Adam Hastings, badge 836. Just gonna get right into it. Okay. Date this report was written. This is the very next day on the 22nd of April 2016. Synopsis. An adult male was found unconscious and not breathing inside of his residence. Life-saving measures were attempted and the male was pronounced dead at the scene. Details. On 4/21/2016 at 9:45 a.m., deputies were dispatched to a medical call at 7801 Audubon Road, Paisley Park. Dispatch advised a male was on the ground and was not breathing. So right there, I guess I want to say, I think that it's a little bit strange, maybe you don't, I don't know, that this deputy, Adam Hastings, is writing almost in like third person, so it makes it a little bit more confusing as you're reading. Whereas, you know, when we get to Deputy James Horvath, he says I when he's talking about himself. He's kind of owning his actions, whereas this one kind of seems like wording it weirdly, like third person or something. Alright, so on 4/21/2016 at 9:45 a.m., deputies were dispatched to a medical call at 7801 Audubon Road, Paisley Park. Dispatch advised a male was on the ground and was not breathing. When Andrew called 911, which I've not read the 911 transcript to you guys, but for anyone who hasn't already read that and become acquainted with it, I guess, Vanessa did read that, and I could, but I kind of want to stay on this, if that's okay. Alright, so Deputy Horvath and I, so now he's using I, but just a second ago, okay, so Deputy Horvath and I arrived on scene at 9:48 a.m. along with Chanhassen Fire personnel. There's that word. So we don't know if that's just Chief Johnson or if there's more than Chief Johnson, and you'll see later in a little bit here about the fire department. Okay, but keeping on track here. Deputy Horvath and I arrived on scene at 9:48 a.m. along with Chanhassen Fire personnel and Ridgeview paramedics. Emergency responders were met at the front door of the residence and escorted to where the male was located. Okay, so then we're going back into third person again, where he's calling himself, I'm thinking, one of the emergency responders. It says, emergency responders were met at the front door of the residence and escorted to where the male was located. But we know from reading Adam Hastings, Deputy Hastings, and Deputy Horvath that they were the first one of the first people to arrive, other than Chief Johnson, who actually pulls Prince from the elevator. And we know that because Hastings, whose report we're on right now, says what I'm about to read in a second. He says it as if he were actually witnessing Prince being pulled from the elevator, whereas Horvath, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit and I'm sorry, but these two do go hand in hand. This guy, Horvath, Deputy James Horvath, he says, I later learned that Chief Johnson, pulled Prince out of the elevator, even though he's supposed to be right there. So that's kind of weird. Point that out again later. So, okay, here we go. Emergency responders were met at the front door of the residence. Okay, by who? Who met them at the front door and let them in? Who escorted them to where Prince was? All of that is unknown. Okay. The male was identified as Prince. Nelson was located inside of the elevator that was located down the main entrance hallway on the right side. Chanhassen Fire Chief Johnson removed Nelson out of the elevator. Now, I mean, that either means this sentence right here, Chanhassen Fire Chief Johnson removed Nelson out of the elevator. That means one of two things. That either happened right in front of Hastings, who's reporting this, or Hastings somehow found out, whether he was briefed or whether he heard someone else say it, that when Nelson was pulled out of the elevator, it was Johnson that did that. So that's part of the problem in this investigation throughout, is that the way that things are worded, you could take a couple of different ways, and you would think that these Keystone cops, because that's what they are, that they would be a little bit more thorough and aware that if they're not thorough, that it could be taken in a couple of different ways, such as this important detail, which is Chanhassen Fire Chief Johnson removed Nelson out of the elevator. So again, this is prompting me to ask, did Adam Hastings, Deputy Adam Hastings, watch Fire Chief Johnson remove Prince from the elevator? Because that would tell us that Hastings was right there. He saw it. He witnessed it. All right, Nelson was lying on the floor on his back with his feet near the door for the elevator. I could tell Nelson was unresponsive and not responding to any stimulation. Well, that's just stupid the way that that's worded. I don't mean to be rude, but I could tell Nelson was unresponsive and not responding to any stimulation. Someone is either responsive or they're not. It's not an I could tell kind of situation. and not responding to any stimulation is the same thing as unresponsive. So this just feels like a stupid sentence. I could tell Nelson was unresponsive and not responding to any stimulation. All right, I noticed that Nelson's right arm appeared to be stiff as it remained in the same position as he was moved on the floor. Okay, so as he was moved on the floor, that sounds like for lack of a better word, an event, you know, that he was actually, the action of being moved onto the floor, his right arm stayed locked, is what it sounds like to me. It remained in the same position as he was moved. So what this does tell me is that Hastings did indeed watch Chief Johnson remove Prince out of the elevator, and when that happened, Hastings noted to himself that Prince looked stiff in his arm, at least because it remained locked, as it should have been moving if it weren't in the same position, if rigor had not set in. That's how I'm reading that. And if you guys that are reading along or even listening, if that doesn't make sense, or if you are thinking that maybe it means something else, that I've got it wrong, please share that in the comments. Let me know, because that is part of why we are doing these videos, to promote conversation about it and to help each other to make sense of all of it, because this is insane. I certainly do not have all the answers, and I am not an officer of the law. I'm no detective, not an investigator at all. But you don't have to be in order to just read and care. I was talking about that recently, and it's like, we don't have to be investigators in order to see. I mean, I know you can't see what's highlighted or underlined, but I mean, you can see how much activity I'm making on there. And I know that sometimes I get a little bit, I don't know, anal retentive, where I get hung up on the way that things are worded. But you see, the whole idea behind documenting the investigation is to paint a perfect picture for somebody who's not there, and trying it on in their mind, and, you know, walking through, you know, there's a reason that you thoroughly document things. What is the point of taking notes that you're going to be able to use on the test if you are a bad note taker? So what's with the bad notes? Because these are terrible. These are absolutely terrible from all of them. It's like every single one. This is only the 5th report that we're hitting, and it's another doozy. Okay, so this is who I think arrived when. So we've got Horvath and Hastings. They seem to be first on the scene. We've got one of them saying that they watched Chief Johnson pull Prince out of the elevator, and the other one is saying, and they're together, they rode in a squad car together. We've got the partner of the other one saying, I later learned that Chief Johnson pulled Prince out of the elevator. And when I saw him, he was in front of the elevator. Okay, then we've got Chanhassen CSO Jasmine Sanchez. Now, Vanessa did some research, some fine-tooth combing, and she was able to pull a first name for this person. But so far, all she is coming up with that Jasmine Sanchez served a purpose that day on the 21st, and so far all it was fetching water for Hannah and Josh, I believe. But she appears in all of this crazy madness. And so she is somewhere in this 948 group. All right, then we've got Chief Johnson. Well, he was probably first, since he's the one that pulled Prince out of the elevator, I would think. But in this madness, you never know. Then, we've got the paramedics. We gotta include them. So 2 paramedics, and we know that there are 2 because they were interviewed, and we'll get into that too in a little bit. Or no, I'm sorry, Brunage, actually. Brunage interviews sorry. Okay, here we go. My bad. All right, so remember, Brunage talks with Chief Johnson. Brunage talks with both paramedics. And he skips around a bit when writing his report, and so that made it a little bit difficult to navigate through that, but once you read all of the reports, then some of them start to make a little bit more sense, which is really sad. You shouldn't have to read other people's reports in order to make the ones make sense. But okay. Alright, so there it is. Okay. Sorry. Alright. So, we've got Hastings and Horvath. We've got CSO Jasmine Sanchez. We've got the Chief Johnson from the fire department. We've got 2 paramedics in the Ridgeview ambulance. And then we've got Brunage, who makes it clear in his report that he arrived with the 948 crew. So then that would be 1 vehicle, 2 vehicle, 3 vehicles, 4 vehicles, and 5 vehicles, all at 948. Isn't it amazing? I mean, that is a coincidence. All right, so And also, this is important, at this point, at 9:48, when all 5 vehicles show up, only these 3 people are there. All right. Okay, so we're at the part where Hastings sees that Rigger is there. Chief Johnson, meanwhile, checks Prince for a pulse and states that he could not feel a pulse. Chief Johnson stated that due to Nelson being warm to the touch, that CPR was going to be started. Chief Johnson began chest compressions. And I, Hastings, was handed the AED by Deputy Horvath. So Horvath sees Chief Johnson pull Prince out and then hands his partner, Adam Hastings, the AED. And as Hastings is removing the pads and activating the AED, the Ridgeview paramedics enter. Hold on a second. See, this is so frustrating because I thought that the paramedics were already there, so where... So then what, the deputies beat the paramedics inside? And I mean, I suppose all of this could have happened so fast that he got in there before the paramedics did and got there just long enough to see Chief Johnson pull Prince out of the elevator and check Prince for a pulse and say, okay, CPR, and start chest compressions, although how many chest compressions were there? See, God, I just have so many questions, and every single answer within this investigation only leads to more questions. So I'm just wondering, like, when this... Okay, so... So how many chest compressions were given before the idea of giving CPR came to a halt? So, all right. As I was removing the pads and activating the AED, Ridgeview paramedics entered. They stated that since there were obvious signs of rigor mortis, life-saving efforts could be stopped. Ridgeview paramedics pronounced the time of death to be 10:07. Just checking my notes, sorry. I then made contact with Sergeant Brunage, who had arrived on scene. Sergeant Brunage advised he would be making phone contact with investigations and the Midwest Medical Examiner's office. At this time, I left the area to obtain statements from the 3 individuals that were on the scene at the time: Kirk Anthony Johnson, Marone Bacure, and Andrew Bateson Cornfeld. Deputy Horvath obtained a recorded statement from Johnson, and I made contact with Bacure. I asked Bakir if she would be willing to give me a recorded statement in regards to what had happened today. She stated she would. Bakir was very emotional and was crying when I made contact with her. A following is a summary of the statement with Bakir. Bakir stated that she is Nelson's personal assistant. Bakir stated Johnson, Kornfeld, and she arrived at Paisley Park around 9 a.m. on 4/21/2016 to check on Nelson. Bakir stated that she had not heard from Nelson and he was not responding to emails and text messages. But he doesn't use a phone. He doesn't have a phone. But he wasn't responding to emails and text messages. Bakir stated the last contact anyone had with Nelson was at around 20 hours, which is 8 p.m. on the 20th. How would she know? I mean, I realize that that's Prince's personal assistant, but how still would she have that close of an eye on him to where she would know something like that, especially knowing that he communicated over the computer? And what if he had like a burner phone? Or how is she gonna know like every contact that he makes with every single body? So I think that that was kind of, I mean, was that maybe a bold statement to make? That the last contact anyone had with him was around 8 p.m. that night. And by the way, when did Will Smith talk to him? Alright, and by the way, about Will Smith, who told him that it would be a good idea to go and say that he just talked to Prince last night on the day that he died? Like, it's a weird thing for our buddy Will to say. I don't know. Just me thinking out loud. Okay. So this is about to get really interesting. Okay, so the last that anyone heard from him at all was 8 o'clock on the 20th. And she stated that the last time she saw Nelson, was at 4:30 p.m. on the 20th. She stated that she arrived at Paisley Park on the 20th to go with Nelson to a doctor's appointment that was scheduled, and that Prince told her that she was not needed and she left. So Bakir states that the reason Nelson was going to the doctor was because he wasn't feeling well, and it was at this point that one of the paramedics came in and explained that they were leaving and discussed viewing Prince to everyone in the room. So let me just get this right. Marone is finally being interviewed. She's already been breaking down and a lot of crying, and she's emotional and she's distressed and distraught, keeps getting mentioned, which anybody would be in that situation. But what I am saying is that it took a lot for Marone to sit down and be willing to talk. It was against her better judgment to do so. because of the NDA that she signed when hired by Prince. All understandable. But what I do not understand is why any paramedic would interrupt someone being questioned she was in the middle of interviewing, and the paramedics came and explained that they're leaving now. We're going to talk to everybody about seeing Prince. And then, all right, deuces, we're out of here. So they came in just long enough to interrupt the interview, re-upset the interviewee, and then as a result, what happens is the cure again became emotional and was hard to understand while speaking with her. So essentially what I'm reading is that the paramedics compromised the entire interview. And the last that I checked, it doesn't go off of the paramedics' desire to leave, or, you know, they too have a protocol. And I imagine, I'm not a paramedic, I'm not a police officer, but I imagine that there's some sort of protocol. Hey, when we are interviewing people, that is crucial to the case or to the event that just took place. Do not interrupt. We're having an important meeting right now. Do not interrupt. If you see this here door closed, don't walk in. Do not knock. Don't interrupt. It's just such a blatant thing to do. I mean, how rude in the first place. And I realize that the paramedics are just trying to do their job, but at the same time, what ultimately just happened that we just read, it didn't just happen. It happened almost 6 years ago. But they costed us getting to know anything further on what Maroon knows and would have maybe said that day, at that moment. Another fail. All right. So, she did state that she arrived along with Johnson and Kornfeld around 9 a.m. to check on Nelson. Now, yeah, see, this just feels like Lettuce again. He's rewriting the same information that we've already just read up here. Like, I already told you guys just a minute ago that, well, it was a few minutes ago now, but I just got done reading that, and it's not me losing my place, it's them rewriting the same information. And I feel like some serious cutting and pasting happened in this investigation. There's repeated information, and like Vanessa and I were talking earlier tonight, and there's like 30 extra pages in one person's report, 30 of the same pages that we've already read. So that's 30 extra pages that we thought we were taking in information, and here it's just repeat. It's just lettuce. Sorry, I needed some. Okay. All right. So, arrived at 9 a.m. to check on Nelson. Bakir stated Nelson was found in the elevator. Well, that's interesting wording again. Bakir stated Nelson was found in the elevator while they were looking for him. Nelson was found by who? Now, see, right there, if I was interviewing her, I would be like, okay, and who? But none of this seems to matter at all. All right. Bakir stated she did not know of any medical problems that Nelson had and had no known medical history. I explained how the rest of the process would work with Bakir and asked if there was anything else she wanted to add to the statement. Bakir stated she did not have anything further to add, and I ended the recording. It just really feels in Marone's interview that she said as little as possible. She was not helpful at all. And I just highly question, and we'll get into this next section about it, just question the time discrepancy at which Andrew and Kirk and Marone all say that they arrived at Paisley Park in the morning. Okay, so we'll start getting into Andrew. I then made contact with Kornfeld. So again, this is Deputy Adam Hastings reporting, and now he's making contact. He just interviewed Marone, and now we're gonna contact Kornfeld, the non-doctor. I asked Kornfeld if he would be willing to talk with me about what he knew about the incident. Kornfeld stated he would. I activated my digital recorder again. The following is a summary of the recording with Kornfeld. I identified Kornfeld and expressed my condolences to Kornfeld. I can't imagine how tragic that really was for him, though. I asked Kornfeld how he knew Nelson. Kornfeld stated that he did not know Nelson. Kornfeld stated he was brought in to help with Nelson's medical issues and some options for getting assistance. Well, that's... Kornfeld stated he met with Johnson and Bakir during the morning hours of 4/21/2016. While he was speaking with Johnson and Bakir, they mentioned that it was very normal to not check on Nelson for a while. Kornfeld stated he advised that they should attempt to make contact with Prince. Kornfeld stated they arrived at Paisley Park at about 9:15. $9:15. $9:15 now. 9:15. Remember, 9:15. Okay. Kornfeld stated that he was in another room at the residence. Now, from all the reading that we've done, we know, well, we think that the other room that he's referring to is actually an office, and that's not a room, that's an office, but technically speaking, it could pass as a room. But I just don't understand the lack of consistency throughout this entire, there's no organization, it feels like. There's no consistency. It's like, let's all call the same room by the same letter of the alphabet, for example, so that no one gets confused. Like, okay, so Kornfeld stated that he was in another room at the residence while Johnson and Bakure went to go check on Nelson. That's not... okay. See, you have to ask yourself, like, am I on drugs or something? Am I hallucinating this? Am I making this up? Am I getting confused? And so you do like a back and forth. You go to this report where it says this, and then you try to go through all of this paperwork to try to find the other missing piece. And by the time you get to that, 10 different things pull you in a different direction, and pretty soon you're lost in a sea of just a mess. It's a mess. So I got frustrated just a second ago because Kornfeld stated he advised that they should attempt to make contact with Nelson. Kornfeld stated that they arrived at Paisley Park about 9:15. Kornfeld stated he was in another room at the residence while Johnson and Bakure went to go check on Nelson. Kornfeld stated he heard a scream and came into the area of the elevator. Kornfeld stated he called 911 and checked Nelson. Kornfeld stated that he decided not to start CPR as he noted signs of rigor mortis. So, Andrew doesn't mention breakfast. He just says that he, according to this officer, which is Adam Hastings, this officer was told by Andrew nothing about breakfast. He just says that he was speaking with Johnson and Bakure. There's no mention of breakfast here. And he tells different officers different times of arriving. His main time of arrival at Paisley Park on the 21st has been 9 o'clock. But here he says 9:15. So that's 15 minutes of a time discrepancy. A lot can happen in 15 minutes. In fact, it's Andrew Kornfeld who says that 15 minutes... Okay, so first of all, we have the 9 or 9:15. One or the other. Or maybe somewhere in between. So that's 15 minutes discrepancy right there. Then we've got Marone saying 9 o'clock. And Marone is saying that she and Andrew and Kirk all arrived together. Then we've got Andrew Kornfeld saying that Josh and Hannah showed up 15 minutes after he showed up. They showed up at Paisley Park. So 15 minutes after Marone, Kirk, and Andrew get to Paisley Park, 15 minutes later is when Andrew claims that Josh and Hannah showed up. But they showed up at 9 o'clock, and the original story is that, and it's in here, we're probably about to read it next with this Hastings and Horvath crap, but Andrew states that he got there at 9 or 9:15, and then he and Marone wait in the office. Kirk comes back, motions or gestures in some way to Marone, come with me. And then Andrew says maybe 10 to 15 minutes pass before he hears a scream. And that doesn't make sense with the location geographically of the elevator in proximity to where he was. It's not 15 minutes worth of nothing. So I know that 15 minutes isn't a very long time, but a lot can happen in 15 minutes. I'm mindful of that. All right. Okay, so Andrew doesn't mention breakfast to this officer. He just says that he met with Marone and Kirk. And I also noticed that Andrew is not talking at all about the way that Prince was positioned. At all. All right, I asked Kornfeld if he knew any medical conditions or history of Nelson. Kornfeld stated he did not know any further information about Nelson. Kornfeld stated he was just there to explain the medical office's program, and if Nelson wanted to go with him, they would return to California. I advised Kornfeld on what would be happening next and ended the recording. Both of the recordings were later downloaded to a CD at the Chanhassen District Office and secured into evidence. So it just kind of like stood out to me, the word just. He just threw the word just in there to kind of downplay the whole thing of why he was there. Oh, I was just there to explain and offer our services. After obtaining the statements, I assisted with scene security. It was also at this time that the Carver County investigators arrived on scene. I was then asked to go to a Carver County investigator, Nucci. Let me read that again. I was then asked to go with a Carver County investigator, Nucci, commas would have helped with that, and attempt to complete the death notification with Nelson's sister in Minneapolis. Nelson's sister and so then where was Tyka? I'll leave that question out there. Where was Tyka when she found out? All right. Okay, Nelson's sister was identified as Tyka Yvonne Nelson. Date of birth redacted with a little 1 circled by it. What is going on? What's with these little 1s and a circle next to it? This is what we're talking about. See that tiny little, see how it's date of birth redacted and then that tiny little 1 circled. Weird. All right, I cleared the scene and had begun to drive to Minneapolis. I was soon contacted by phone that Taika had been notified, and I could return to Chanhassen. So, one question that I've always had is, was it Kirk that told Taika? Did he want to be the one to tell her? And also, what's up with their like ultra fast lightning speed notifying her 2-second phone call? I know if someone called me and said, your brother, he's gone, that I would be like, what do you mean he's gone? Like, why are you saying that? You better be joking. It wouldn't have been, all right, bye. Or it wouldn't have been like, click and I'm in the car. And we won't even get into the hair being purple, but okay. Sorry. Alright, so Nelson's sister was identified as Taika. I cleared the scene, began to drive to Minneapolis, and I returned to Chanhassen after being told that Taika had been notified. When I returned to the scene, I assisted with traffic and crowd control around Paisley Park and did not go back into the residence. I also provided Deputy Horvath a break from approximately 11:25 a.m. to noon. Deputy Horvath was responsible for the crime scene log at the main gate into Paisley Park. See Deputy Horvath's report for further information. And that we will. I stayed on scene and assisted with crowd traffic control until 8 p.m. End of report. Just make sure I don't have any notes. Okay, so what I've got for my little notes. Andrew Kornfeld, pre-med with medical background, arrived at Minneapolis Airport at 5:53. Kirk and Marone checked him into Country Inn. How, I'm not sure if that was in person. You know, Marone also had a room at the Country Inn where Andrew was staying. So there's that interesting little tidbit. But either way, it is stated in the investigation that multiple times that Kirk and Marone are the ones that checked him into Country Inn and Suites. But he didn't go to his room. He went to breakfast with them. And we were guessing, but it seems to me that the impression that I got is that they went to the hotel breakfast, where you would go for having breakfast in the cafeteria. And let's see here. I did call the Country Inn and Suites, and I've looked into what time breakfast is offered. I'm pretty sure it was 6 o'clock. Breakfast is available. I mean, if Andrew didn't go to his room and he landed at 5:53 and they didn't go to Paisley Park until 9 or 9:15, quite a bit of time. He didn't go to his room, so he was at breakfast with Kirk and Marone for 3 hours, roughly. That is one long breakfast. Okay. Okay, and another little highlight. Andrew Kornfeld said that his meeting was arranged between Howard, Kirk, and Marone, and it is possible because Andrew was getting Marone's name mixed up. He didn't remember her name when he was asked what her name was. He couldn't remember her name, and I think at one point he says Phaedra and really it's Marone, or he says Marone and really it's Phaedra. I'm trying to remember right now. I can't think of what it is that he was talking about specifically, but the point here is that he's not well acquainted with everyone. He just kind of got thrown into this situation by his father. Here, I can't go, but it's Prince, and so you go on my behalf. Get him to come here, assess him, make sure there really is an issue, and bring him back. Convince him to come back. And so, in conversating with Vanessa about all of this, the topic of Andrew's being naive or not, we were kind of talking about that, and it's, you know, it's our own speculation, but we do talk about all of this stuff. And an interesting point was made that Andrew is obviously not an idiot. So he's pre-med, he's medical background, but more than that, why would Howard send his son unless he had total faith in his son to act in his place? So, as Vanessa said, if anyone's gonna admit that you're an idiot, it's gonna be your mom and dad. And that makes perfect sense to me. But here his dad is counting on him, leaning on him, asking him for help. Hey, go to Minnesota. I know it's late, but go. Or however that went. However that was said. And Andrew did. He went. Wonder if he ever regrets that. Okay. Yep. So it's possible that Andrew is getting his women mixed up when it comes to Prince's camp, and that when he is talking about the meeting that was arranged between Howard and Kirk and one female, it could either be Marone or Phaedra. Not sure yet. But we will get through all of it. But the main takeaway that I am visiting is the part where Kornfeld has stated that he got there at 9. Oh wait, it was 9:15. That is one of the biggest things on this. And also, this report is helpful in that it helps us piece together when everyone arrived, because that is quite a job, apparently. We couldn't just clearly write that out anywhere in this pile of mess. All right, stay tuned for Horvath.